Grace and peace to you this morning, and welcome to worship. Those of you who are joining us here in the sanctuary, and those of us joining online, we welcome you to this time and this place that we've set aside to be able to worship the Lord our God as we continue in the season of Lent, the second Sunday of Lent. And as some of you may know, we're looking at Lent through objects, everyday, ordinary objects. And today, our object that we're focusing on is the cross. So, the central symbol of our faith is everywhere we can find it, in sanctuaries, in church buildings, and in our homes. And if you don't have enough crosses, or if you want to add one to your altar that you're starting to build at home, we do have these small wooden crosses in a basket in the back of the sanctuary. I will invite you to grab one on your way out if you've not already received one. If you are worshiping online and you wish to get a cross, you can stop in during office hours during the week and grab one from the sanctuary. We also still have a few jars of the dirt from Ash Wednesday if you want to add that as well. So we'll just invite you to continue building your altar. Whenever you're here in the building, you can grab whatever has been already handed out through previous weeks. So we'll invite you to take one of those before you leave. A couple of announcements as we begin. The first is, as you may already be able to see, we're starting to collect our shoes and socks up here. So if you have shoes and socks that you wish to donate for the students at Trinity West and Trinity North Elementary Schools, we need them in here by March 27th. We'll do a blessing and worship that day, and then we'll give them to the school the following week. So you have 2 more weeks to bring them in. As you bring them in, whether it's during the week or on Sunday morning, we just invite you to lay them somewhere at the foot of the altar table or somewhere along the altar rail, and just continue to build that collection as we make that donation. So the other announcements that you will see in your bulletin, the back of your bulletin, there's many that are important. I'll just invite you to take a look at. One of them is that we had a great soup sale on social last Sunday, but we have some leftover soup in the freezer here at the church. So if you want to grab a cup or two or a quart to go, the suggested donation prices are in the bulletin, and you can simply, actually, the easiest thing if you're here is just put that money in an offering envelope and mark soup sale, put it in the offering plate, and then just grab the soup that you want from the freezer on your way out. Or again, you can come during the week and grab soup as well. As we begin our time of worship, I'll invite you to pray with me. God of wisdom and of power, we get so caught up in the wisdom of this age, wanting you to fulfill our desires even when they do not reflect your will or wisdom. So forgive us. Forgive us for demanding anything other than the foolishness of the cross. Help us to rest in the saving power of Christ's cross, so that we can be a fool for him until he comes in glory. Amen. I'll invite you to stand and join me for our first hymn. And again, we have Tony Sears here with us this morning, and so I welcome Tony, and I'm glad to have you with us again for another Sunday. And let us stand and sing "Lift High the Cross."
Till all the world adore.
Scriptures this morning are from Mark chapter 8 and 1 Corinthians chapter 1. First from Mark 8, verses 31 to 38. Then Jesus began to teach his disciples, the human one must suffer many things and be rejected by the elders, chief priests, and the legal experts, and be killed. And then after 3 days rise from the dead. He said this plainly. But Peter took hold of Jesus and scolding him began to correct him. Jesus turned and looked at his disciples and then sternly corrected Peter. Get behind me, Satan. You are not thinking God's thoughts, but human thoughts. After calling the crowd together with his disciples, Jesus said to them, all who want to come after me must say no to themselves, take up their cross, and follow me. All who want to save their lives will lose them, but all who lose their lives because of me and because of the good news will save them. Why would people gain the whole world but lose their lives? What will people give in exchange for their lives? Whoever is ashamed of me and my words in this unfaithful and sinful generation, the human one will be ashamed of that person when he comes in the Father's glory with the holy angels. And then reading from 1 Corinthians chapter 1, verse 18. The message of the cross is foolishness to those who are being destroyed, but it is the power of God for those of us who are being saved. And Lord, add to the reading and hearing of these words. And it looks like we have no children here today, so we're going to skip over the children's moments today and go directly into the message, and I'll invite you to pray with me. Oh Lord, open my lips, and my mouth will declare your praise. Amen. We lost the cross. Well, not really. It's just that after even 8 years here, I still didn't know where this sanctuary cross was stored. So when someone came to me last week, the day before Ash Wednesday, wanting to get the cross out for the sanctuary so that we'd have our cross up there for Ash Wednesday, I didn't know where to direct them. Together, this person and I looked at all the places that we thought the cross could be, and eventually gave up, knowing that Bill Tarr would be here later, and surely he would know where it was. And he did. We obviously found it. It was not lost for long, as you can see. And maybe it was never really lost, because it was exactly where it was supposed to be, tucked away in the furnace room, though it comes apart, and when stored, it looks just like a couple of 4x4s just stacked neatly against the wall, like leftover building materials, which makes it easy to miss even when you're looking for it, because we looked there and we didn't see it. All of this is a little embarrassing for a pastor and preacher of the gospel to admit, that I lost the cross, that it was tucked away. Jesus says, take up your cross and follow me, and I can't even locate the cross for our sanctuary. I think that even if Bill Tarr hadn't come to our rescue, we could have managed to worship without this sanctuary cross put up every year during Lent. After all, we have other crosses, right? They're everywhere in a Christian church. We have this beautiful cross here, this beautiful handmade cross that hangs above the altar and is now backlit. We have small crosses and large crosses, and we have gold crosses and crosses we wear around our necks. We have a clock in the shape of a cross that I get to look at every week as you all look at this cross. We have additional crosses throughout the season of Lent on the banners and that have been scattered around this building. Now, if you're, by the way, if you're not familiar with Avery before 2020, in the before years, we in 2020 repainted this sanctuary, and when we did, we got rid of a curtain that hung behind the cross, and we ended up affixing the cross, this sanctuary cross, just to the wall. And what we did was we decided to put lights behind it. So last year, when we were all worshiping in our homes for Lent, we decided, just the staff, those of us who were coming in and out of the building, we decided that we would leave the lights on all the time during the season of Lent, 24/7 during the season of Lent, as a reminder to us, and we were the only ones entering and exiting the building, but a reminder to us of the hope of Jesus Christ, the light of the world, in this dark season. And so we decided to do that again this year. So for a second straight year, we have this cross on 24/7 as a reminder of hope and light in the midst of the season of Lent. But when we think about it and all the crosses that we have, do we really need to clutter up the sanctuary with one more cross? We have enough, don't we? Do I really need to be called upon to approve every year, which I am called upon, to approve how that cloth is draped around the cross? This is the central symbol of the Christian faith. It is everywhere. Jesus has instructed us to take up our crosses, and we have not disappointed. The cross is the focal point of sanctuaries, altars, church logos. The cross is vital to decorations and artwork and even jewelry. There are different kinds of crosses, you might even notice. There are crucifixes with Jesus still on the cross. There are Celtic crosses. There is the United Methodist cross in flame, and so on and so forth. Jesus would be so proud of us today, wouldn't he? Because we have taken up our crosses. Except here's the thing we often forget. It's kind of a weird symbol. It's kind of a weird symbol to use as the central symbol of our faith, because the cross was a device of torture and execution. It was not supposed to be a symbol to give people hope and joy. Rather, it would have been a symbol to those first Christians of threat and terror. The cross, in fact, rests in the pantheon of public torture and capital punishment devices, right alongside the electric chair, the guillotine, the noose, and the lynching tree. And we sit here every Sunday and we worship it. Why? Why do we worship a cross? What can the cross teach us? Well, the first thing it can teach us and remind us of is that Jesus died. Jesus didn't have to, yet Jesus chose to die. And this same Jesus who died on the cross was the Jesus that just a few months ago we announced around Christmas time as Emmanuel, God with us, at his birth. And already we are observing his suffering and death in this season. Both instances reminding us that Jesus really was fully human. He was really born and he really died. As some of you know, I teach college English here in Washington, but I also low-key teach my students about deeper truths because I'm given the chance to choose my own texts to have the students read for the English class. We are right now in the middle of reading a very depressing book, and I will admit that it's a depressing book and that they don't really like it much because it's depressing. It is a book called Being Mortal because it reminds us that we are all mortal, that we all face death at some time. But I can tell you that as much as these students don't like it, it makes an impact on them because when you're 18 and you're 19 years old, you don't think much about death. If you can remember back to that time, you were not thinking about death, your own or anyone's. Your whole life was ahead of you. You didn't want to think about your own mortality at that age. And my students don't either. And as we know, as we get older, death becomes more and more of a reality for us. The older we get, the more we find ourselves visiting funeral homes, first for people a bit older than us, and then people our age, and then siblings and friends and former coworkers. To be human is, among other things, to encounter our mortality. So to look upon the cross as a symbol of faith is to encounter the humanity of Christ. To remember that Jesus submitted himself to a physical human death, one that each of us must one day submit to as well. Jesus was Emmanuel, God with us, in this wonderful way of living among us, but also in a very real and painful way of dying our death. The second thing the cross reminds us of is that Jesus was the kind of person who humbled himself. Philippians 2 verses 7 and 8 tell us that Jesus, though he was in the form of God, did not consider being equal with God something to exploit, but he emptied himself. And when he found himself in the form of a human, he humbled himself, the writer of Philippians says, by becoming obedient to the point of death, even death on a cross. About 25 years ago, the question, what would Jesus do, was so popular that many of us wore that question around our wrists with cloth bracelets. What would Jesus do? And that's a great question to ask many days of our lives. But today, with these scriptures, I wonder if the more appropriate question might be, where would Jesus be? Where would Jesus be? Jesus, we're told, was God, and yet Jesus didn't see God as something, being God, as something to exploit. He didn't see that power and that authority that he had as something to exploit for his own benefit, as maybe we might often be tempted to do just that, as New Testament scholar Jennifer Kalin points out. Now, it might be a little strong to say we would exploit it, but how often, let's be honest, might we be tempted to try to use our closeness with God, our holiness, our own personal righteousness as a way to build ourselves up, even above others sometimes? How often do we hope that maybe there's some advantage to being close to the Lord Almighty, that cozying up to God's supreme authority and power will do good for us? And yet Jesus was not in that place. Jesus instead demonstrated power through weakness, through humility, through service. He humbled himself as one who traveled lightly, who served others, who demonstrated compassion and sympathy and obedience to the Creator. Where would Jesus be? Jesus would not be in opulent palaces, but he would be in dirty, crowded streets, because that's where he was found when he lived among us. Not at the head of the table, but the lowest place, we're told in Scripture. Not standing above his disciples, but as we see, kneeling below them to wash their dirty feet. Jesus rode a donkey into Jerusalem, not a majestic steed. And so if Jesus rode into our city today, he probably wouldn't do so behind the wheel of a luxury car. He'd probably take the bus. So the cross, as central symbol to our faith, reminds us to travel lightly, to travel humbly through this world as Jesus did. Where would Jesus be, we might ask ourselves? We would find Jesus in the places most in need of compassion and sympathy. We'd find Jesus in places of suffering, where others suffer, so that he might suffer with. The very definition of compassion, suffering with. We'd find Jesus surrounded by people otherwise discarded by the world, like the thieves who hung on either side of him with a cross for them, just as for Jesus. The cross is not only a symbol of execution and death, it's also a symbol of humility, of compassion, suffering with, and of service. But when we ask that question, where would Jesus be today? One answer would be that he is no longer on the cross, correct? His cross stands empty to the sky, cries one triumphant Easter hymn. And while we can't have Easter without Good Friday, the opposite is also true. We can't have the resurrection without the death of Christ. But Christ's death also means nothing without the resurrection. The empty cross is what turns everything on its head. The death of Jesus leading to life, suffering leading to salvation, a symbol of torture now becoming what we know as a symbol of hope, that Christ is alive, that the cross is empty. It stands empty to the sky. Worshipping a state-sponsored tool of execution was, and still is, a little bit odd. In fact, it seems foolish. And it is in many ways. The message of the cross, Paul says, is foolishness to the world, which always makes me recall one of my favorite quotes from a seminary professor who once said that being a fool for Christ isn't the same as being stupid for Jesus. We must be wise about what that foolishness means. To those who understand the truths contained in the cross, it has the power to remind us that God is with us. God really truly became human and lived with us. And Christ came into the places of suffering and suffered with. And the power of the state to take a human life pales in comparison to the power of God to raise life, to conquer death. We have crosses everywhere. Everywhere in our churches, everywhere in our homes. It is definitely the most common decorative gift that I receive. It's on nearly every greeting card I've ever received as a pastor. So I believe that we are not in any danger of losing it, as I thought we had lost our big Lenten and Easter sanctuary cross. We're not in danger of losing that because now I know where it goes, and now you all know too, because I told you. And we don't have to rely on Beltar anymore to save us from losing it. We're not in danger of losing the cross, but sometimes I wonder if we're in danger of losing its meaning, or of tucking it away, only to bring out at certain times of the year, because we're just not comfortable. Even we may not be 18 and 19-year-old college students, but we may not be comfortable talking about the cross or focusing and fixating on these messages of the cross. And it may also be true that the cross has become such a ubiquitous symbol for Christians that its power has become diminished, reduced to a mere trinket or decoration. The encouragement today is to not let that happen to us. To not let the cross become just a foolish symbol, but to let it remind us of the power of God, to take on human form, to suffer with, and to humble himself to the point of death, and then to conquer death once and for all. To conquer death not only for himself, not just to exploit that power, but to use that power to pull us up as well, to help us conquer death as well. Lift high that cross. Proclaim the love of Christ. Cherish the old rugged cross, because it is one day exchanged for a crown. In the name of the Father, and of the Son, and of the Holy Spirit. Amen. Let's remain seated as we sing the old rugged cross. continue in a spirit of prayer, I will invite you to pray silently for a period of time, and then I will continue us in prayer until we close with the Lord's Prayer. Let us pray. Oh Lord, thank you. Thank you for being born to live among us. Thank you for suffering death not because you had to, but because you chose to. Thank you for demonstrating humble service, for placing yourself in places of suffering so that you may suffer with. Thank you for suffering even to the point of death. So that we too may live alongside you as you are raised. So that we too may be victors of death. So that we too may remember that the cross, symbol of torture and death, stands empty because it has been emptied of its power over us. It has been emptied over its power over you. And through you and the salvation you offer, we are given this great gift of eternal life. Lord, help us to cling to all of these truths and all of these things to which we are thankful in times of suffering. Very real pain and suffering that we feel in our own lives. The inner turmoil we feel. Struggle with mental illness, the heartache of grief, the pain and uncertainty of physical illnesses, our own or those around us. Help us to cling to these truths. Be our light in the darkness when we face the struggles of this world. The inequity that persists out of our human selfishness and greed. The conflict and war that breaks out in many places. Because we have not yet heeded your call to peace. The destruction of this great created world, this gift that you have given us, that we often fail to care for as we ought to. These and many other things that cause suffering, Lord, things that threaten to cause us to lose hope. So help us to remain hopeful. Help us to trust in a cross, the power of it, and just as importantly, the power of its emptiness, so that we may be filled with your love and care, with your forgiveness when we have failed to remember the cross, when we have failed to fixate on your love and grace, when we have instead chosen the wisdom and the ways of this world. Forgive us, Lord, and remind us to remain in you. All this we pray in the name of your Son, Jesus Christ, who taught us to pray, and so we now pray together, saying, Our Father, who art in heaven, hallowed be thy name. Thy kingdom come, thy will be done, on earth as it is in heaven. Give us this day our daily bread. Forgive us our trespasses, as we forgive those who trespass against us. Lead us not into temptation, but deliver us from evil. For thine is the kingdom, and the power, and the glory forever. Amen. There are many ways that you can give to the ministry of this church, to the ministry elsewhere in the world as well, including our shoe and sock drive that we're in the midst of, as well as ways that are listed in your bulletin for you to give to support and aid the people of Ukraine. I invite you to give in whatever way your heart feels led, by using the offering plate in the back of the sanctuary, by giving safely and securely online through our website, or by using traditional means of the mail or stopping by the office throughout the week. I invite you to offer up your gifts and your hearts as we pray together. Lord, we will never, ever have the same mind of Christ, because his sacrifice and love and compassion can only inspire us to respond with humility, looking to the interest of others in ways that often feel trivial. And yet, Lord, we trust today that you will take whatever we offer in this moment in faith, that you will bless it and break it and use it in ways that nurture others, bring joy, and show your love. Amen. I'm going to invite you to stand and sing our closing hymn, Where He Leads Me.
I
God of all grace, who calls us to his eternal glory, will himself restore, support, strengthen, and establish each and every one of us. To God be all honor, glory, and power forever and ever.